yesterday during our virtual lesson for Writer's Workshop, we took a look at a sample planning sheet and talked about how our main idea sentences on our planning sheet should be focused on story elements and author's craft as they're used to develop the theme. Okay. And I shared with you a sample plan. It's still uploaded onto Teams, so you can access that at any time. In addition, I modeled for you an introduction, and just as a review, with your checklist in front of you, everybody hold your checklist up so I can see that you have it out. Okay, so when we're looking at the introduction, the structure really hasn't changed all that much from the other essays that we've written. You want your hook to be a quote from the book. I will be your missing eye and you will be my wings. This quote from the book Fox. So notice that we're given the title and the author. And I have to tell you, I was impressed with those of you who used a Word document to write your introduction. You knew that you italicized the title. And those of you who wrote it out on paper, well, you weren't always as successful about remembering to underline it. Okay, which is why I underlined mine even though I did it into a Word document. By underlining it or italicizing it, you are telling your reader it's a book. Okay, this quote from the book Fox by Margaret Wilde emphasizes how dog and magpie work together to survive in the outback. The author develops the theme using figurative language. She uses repetition to develop the theme. The theme is shown through character development. The theme of this book is that friends can help you through difficult times. So, looking at your checklist, you can see that you begin with a quote, that you need to make sure that you mention the title and the author of the book, that you should still have 3 main idea sentences right from your planning sheet, and your theme also from your planning sheet. Now, I want you to notice, like we talked about yesterday in our class, that now is the time to start challenging yourself to vary your sentences. Up to this point, we've been trying to learn the structure of an essay, and hopefully, Marley, if your eyes could be up here, it would be helpful. I'm sorry, Eliza. Why do I keep calling you Marley? You both have blonde hair. I don't know. Okay, so, oh, Aiden, do you need a lunch today? Okay. Well, welcome. Okay, so we're at the point now where we want to start to challenge ourselves to vary our sentences so that our essay does not sound so mechanical. So you'll notice that even though on my planning sheet it said Margaret Wilde developed the theme using figurative language, I wrote the author because I already said Margaret Wilde. I don't need to repeat her name again. My reader is going to remember her name. The introduction is not that long. She uses repetition to develop the theme. So notice I didn't say the author uses repetition to develop the theme. Okay? I changed it up a little bit. And then finally, the theme is shown through character development. Now notice I used the word shown rather than develop because I didn't want to repeat develop. The theme is developed through character development. I didn't want to have that word in there twice. And then some of you struggled with this yesterday when I looked at your introductions, that for those of you who submitted one for feedback, some of you just wrote the theme, but you need to say the theme. The theme of this book is that friends can help you through difficult times, whichever way you chose to write it. Okay? I was actually kind of surprised at the number of people who continue to struggle with this. The structure is basic and has not changed since the beginning of the year. And some of you are still struggling to write complete sentences. So we need to challenge ourselves to improve that. Okay, so after we've planned with our thesis statement about the theme, with our main ideas about how the theme was developed using our story elements and author's craft, after we choose the details from the text that are going to support them, and based on the essays that I'm going to meet with some of you about today for conferencing, the ones that you wrote about the character, some of you are having trouble still aligning your details to support your main idea. When you're choosing a detail, it has nothing to do with the main idea, and you don't realize it because you don't do your elaboration. So hopefully you'll see today when I model a body paragraph what I'm talking about. When you elaborate, you're connecting your choice of detail to your main idea. And if you're elaborating properly, you will see that that main idea, that detail is not supporting the main idea. So we really need to work on getting that alignment, making our choices so that we understand how we're supporting the main idea. All right, so let's take a look. Keeping your checklist next to you. Whoops. Keeping your checklist next to you, let's go ahead and take a look at this body paragraph. And you'll notice that your checklist tells you to indent first. If you're doing word processing, if you're doing a document camera, there's a tab key. If you hit that tab key, it will automatically shift you over to an indent. Let me show you. Okay, if I had just typed and started typing, I would not have an indent there. But if I hit the tab button, it automatically shifts it over and indents the paragraph. So you want to make sure that you're doing that to show that you're indenting. Just like you would do if you were writing it on a piece of paper, you could leave the space the width of your finger to show that. And then notice when I come down for my second line, I bring it back out to the regular margin. Some of you are still struggling with that, and it's a little bit worrisome that you still don't know how to indent. That's a very basic skill. So that's why it's on the checklist, to kind of give you a reminder that you're supposed to do that. All right, the first box on our checklist, or I should say the second after indenting, is that you use a transitional phrase. And you'll notice in the model, guys, your eyes should be up here or on your checklist, but not roaming around the room. First, all right, that's my transitional phrase, comma. Some of you are still struggling about knowing when to put a comma after your transitional phrase. First, comma, Margaret Wilde develops the theme using figurative language. And if we go back up, we can see that that's the very first main idea. That's the very first main idea that's listed in the introduction. So you can see that that is right from there. Margaret Wilde, except now instead of the author, now I'm going to say Margaret Wilde to just kind of remind the reader. Okay. So the second check on the checklist is transitional phrase, main idea sentence. Okay. Now I'm going to start to introduce the evidence I've chosen to support this main idea. Obviously, I want to choose figurative language. And figurative language is a really big, broad term that includes a lot of different types of author's craft. Okay, I've chosen two things I want to talk about. For example, so I'm introducing a piece of evidence. I go to my chart, my transitional phrases chart. I look in the row that says introducing a piece of evidence. and I choose for example. For example, comma, she uses color words to express Magpie's emotions. So her choice of using color to represent emotions is one of the figurative languages I am going to mention. Okay, now I'm going to give my evidence. The first thing I'm doing is I am citing my evidence. I am saying where it comes from in the book. Now, we've had a conversation many times about our book Fox. It does not have page numbers. It does not have chapters. So we're referring or citing the text in this case by saying where in the story it occurs. And this first piece of evidence occurs in the beginning of the story. In the beginning of the story, she writes, Magpie drags her body into the shadow of the rocks until she feels herself melting into blackness. Now notice that's a quote. Begins with a quotation mark, ends with a quotation mark. My reader knows that I lifted that sentence directly from the text. Now, if you look at your checklist, the fourth check is to elaborate on it. Now remember, when you're elaborating, you're connecting this piece of evidence back to the idea that you're talking about. So black expresses the intense grief she feels about her burnt wing. All right, so when I said she uses color words to express Magpie's emotions, grief is an emotion. So my elaboration, Haley, my elaboration is going to refer back to the use of color words and emotions. Later in the story, there is another cited piece of evidence, right, to support this idea that she uses color words. Later in the story, Dog is running with Magpie on his back. And here's another quotation. He races through the scrub, past the stringy barks, past the clumps of yellow box trees, and into blueness. Close the quotes. Now, elaboration. I don't just give the detail. I have to say more about it. I have to connect it to this idea that she uses color words to express emotions. Blue is a lighter, cooler color than black and expresses a lifting of Magpie's emotion as Dog helps her accept her loss. Now notice that's what we're talking about, right? Our theme is that friends can help you through difficult times. It's being developed through the use of color words to express emotion. Galila, I don't know what you're writing, but I'm going to ask you to put your pencil down. She rejoices, and since rejoices is a word taken directly from the text, it is in quotation marks. In the end of the story, the desert is red and adrift in heat. Again, adrift in heat appears. Those are not my words. Those are Margaret Wild's words. And then red, we need to talk about what red, another color word, expresses. Oops, I need to do that. Red expresses the fear Magpie feels after being left alone in the desert. So notice, red, fear is an emotion. The elaboration refers back to that idea that Margaret Wild uses color words to express Magpie's emotions. All right, so now I'm going to talk about something else because I noticed other figurative language that she used. Another example of figurative language, okay, notice there's no comma here because it flows into the full sentence, can be found, another example of figurative language can be found in the middle of the story. All right, so notice that transitional phrase. If you look on your checklist, it's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The fifth check. It's the fifth check. So we're using a transitional phrase to introduce or to shift from another example. Another example of figurative language can be found in the middle of the story. Margaret Wilde makes an unusual choice of words when describing Fox. She writes, and here's the quote. I don't have to cite it again because I already set up here that it was in the middle of the story. At night, his smell seems to fill the cave, a smell of rage and envy and loneliness. Now, I need to say more. This and Fox's haunted eyes gives the readers the impression that Fox is also having to deal with a difficult time. Fox, however, does not have a friend to help him through it. So remember, again, the elaboration is pointing to and describing the theme. How did the author develop the theme? What did the author do? And then finally, the last check on your checklist for your body paragraph is the sentence that restates the main idea and refers it back to the thesis. So we're going to be looking, Jaden, for words that are in that connecting or last sentence that are going to include the main idea and the thesis. So Margaret Wilde uses figurative language, that's my main idea, to develop the idea that friends can help you through difficult times. That's the theme. So when you're writing your body paragraphs, you need to have this checklist right beside you. You need to have your text right beside you. You need to have your planning sheet right beside you. Without those things to be your guide, you're going to sit there at your desk and you're not going to know what to do. So it's really important that you put the time and effort into using the tools that you've been given, the charts that are in your green packet, the lessons that you've had already, to produce quality work. Because I'm still seeing some of you are not really producing the work that would be expected of a fourth grader. And we're pretty close to being almost halfway through fourth grade. So we want to start challenging ourselves to make our work look like our mentor text. All right, so today during work time, you're going to start working on your body paragraphs using your checklist and using the text, using all the tools and charts you have in your green packet. You're going to be working on getting your body paragraphs written. I doubt that you'll get all three of them written today, but if you finish the first one, move on to the second one. Now, while you're working, I am going to conference with you on your last essay. I'm going to ask you to bring with you your writing conference sheet. And that's the sheet that you have in your binder that I have used to conference with your essays. Now, if this is the first essay that you've written with me, I will have a conference sheet for you to get you started. It goes into your binder in the conference, C-O-N, conference section, and that's where it's kept so that you know the goals that you're working on. So if you have a conference sheet now in your binder, go ahead and pull it out and keep it on your desk. Take a minute to look at it to see what kinds of goals that we have set for you and what you're supposed to be working on to improve your work. And then go ahead and get started.